Hello, Virgo. There are truths that wait patiently, without urgency, in the dark behind the door you chose not to open, in the silence between the words that were always slightly too careful, in the gap between what you were told and what you felt, that persistent, hair thin gap that you kept trying to close with explanation, with generosity, with the benefit of the doubt given one more time. And the truth waited. It was never in a hurry because it knew the way truths always know, that eventually the door opens. Eventually the silence breaks. Eventually, the gap becomes too wide to paper over with anything. And here you are, at the door. Let's not look away tonight. I want to start with the body, because the body always knew, long before the mind was willing, long before you had words for it, or evidence for it, or permission to name it. The body was already living in the truth, carrying it in the tightness that appeared in certain conversations, in the sleeplessness that had no obvious explanation, in the way your stomach moved differently around certain people, in certain rooms, in certain silences that lasted a beat too long. You felt it. You translated it as something else. Anxiety, maybe. Overthinking, the old pattern returning, something in you that was broken rather than something around you that was wrong. That translation, that turning of accurate perception into personal malfunction, is one of the oldest tricks in the book. And it works for a while, until the body runs out of ways to carry what the mind refuses to hold. The painful truth. I'm not going to dress it up, because I think part of why you're here tonight is that you're tired of things being dressed up, tired of the careful packaging, tired of the softening and the reframing and the generous interpretation of things that perhaps did not deserve quite so much generosity. There is a particular kind of pain that comes with certain truths, not the sharp pain of a sudden thing. Something slower, more like pressure than puncture, the kind that builds behind the eyes. That sits in the throat. That makes ordinary things a song on the radio, the quality of light at a certain hour, a smell that shouldn't mean anything, suddenly unbearable. That pain is not a sign that you were foolish to believe what you believed. It is a sign that what you gave was real, that the investment was genuine, that you were actually there fully without performance, inside something that perhaps didn't deserve the fullness of you. The pain is proof of your realness, not your weakness. Let me talk about the moment of finding out. That specific, irreversible moment when the information lands, when the thing that was hidden becomes unhidden, when the gap between the story you were living and the story that was actually happening collapses into a single point of clarity that you will never be able to unknow. There is a before and an after, and the line between them is that moment. And the person on the after side of that line, the one standing in the new reality, still holding the shape of the old one like a phantom limb, that person needs something that almost no one offers them enough of. Time, just time, not advice, not reframes, not the immediate pivot to what this means and what comes next and how to heal and what the lesson is. Just the permission to stand in the before and after simultaneously for a while, to not yet know what to do with the truth that arrived, to hold the contradiction of grieving something that was never fully what you thought it was, which is perhaps the strangest grief there is. Wait, I need to stay here for a moment, because there is a very specific interior experience that happens when you find out something painful about someone you trusted, or about a situation you were inside of, or about yourself in relation to something you now see differently. The mind goes back immediately, involuntarily, like a hand reaching into a drawer that's already been emptied, just checking, just making sure, unable to fully accept that what was there is gone. And it starts replaying, running back through scenes you thought you understood, now lit differently, now carrying new meaning, now arranged into a pattern that was always there and that you were always in some part of yourself already seeing. And in that replay, there is a question that arrives like a wound. How did I not know? But you did know. That's the unbearable part. Not that you were blind, but that you saw and chose, for reasons that made complete sense at the time, to keep the light low, to not look too directly at the thing that would require everything to change. The labyrinth of a hidden truth has a particular architecture. It is built to feel like home. That's what makes it so difficult to name while you're inside it. The walls are familiar. The corridors have your scent. You know where the light falls at what hour. You've memorized the cold spots and the warm ones. And so when something doesn't fit, when a door leads somewhere it shouldn't, when a room feels wrong in a way you can't explain, you attribute it to yourself rather than to the architecture. You redecorate around the wrongness. You learn to navigate the uneven floor. You stop inviting people into the rooms that would raise questions. And gradually, so gradually, that you can't point to the moment it happened, you become the guardian of a labyrinth built to house a lie. Not because you're complicit, because love or trust or familiarity or need made the architecture feel like yours, made the maintenance of it feel like loyalty. And then the truth arrives, and the labyrinth collapses, not slowly, all at once, and you are standing in open air for the first time in however long, disoriented, exposed, blinking in a light that has no walls to soften it. And the first feeling is not relief. It is vertigo. Because even a labyrinth was shelter. Even a lie was a structure. And the open air, the raw, honest, unmanaged open air of finally knowing is terrifying before it is freeing. That vertigo is not a sign that the truth was wrong to arrive. It is the feeling of a nervous system adjusting to reality after a long time living in a managed version of it. It passes, not quickly, but it passes, and what comes after it, the ground that forms under your feet in the open air, is more solid than anything the labyrinth ever offered. I want to talk about the tears, because the title promised them, And I don't think they need to be earned or justified or dressed up as something more dignified than they are. The tears that come with a painful truth, they are not only sadness, they are the body releasing pressure it has been holding since before it had a name for what it was holding. They are the physical form of a long carried weight finally being set down. They are, and this is the part that sounds strange but is true, a form of relief, because the not knowing was its own suffering. The half knowing living inside, the suspicion without the confirmation, carrying the question without the answer. That was its own particular exhaustion. And now there is nothing left to suspect, nothing left to manage or avoid or carefully not look at. The truth is in the room, and the room is finally just the room. Cry if it needs crying. The tears are not weakness. They are the sound of something real moving through you, and real things moving through you, however uncomfortable, is infinitely better than real things being held still inside you, turning slowly into something harder and less movable. I'm not sure why, but this feels important right now. The painful truth does not rewrite everything that came before it. I know that's not what the mind wants to hear in the first wave. The mind wants to go back and invalidate, to take the new information and use it to strip the meaning from every moment that existed before the knowing, to decide retroactively that none of it was real because this part wasn't. But that is not how it works. What was real in you, the genuine feeling, the actual presence, the real love or trust or investment, that was always real, regardless of what was or wasn't real on the other side. Your experience belongs to you. It cannot be retroactively emptied by someone else's actions. What they did or didn't do, what was hidden, what was carried in silence, what the truth reveals, that speaks to who they were in those moments, not to who you were, not to the validity of what you brought, not to the worth of the version of you that showed up fully to something that was not fully showing up in return. Your realness was never contingent on their honesty. The broken key, there is a version of you being forged in this right now, in the pain of the knowing, in the vertigo of the open air, in the grief of loving something that contained at its center a hidden thing. That version of you, the one being shaped by this particular fire, carries something that cannot be taught, cannot be read, cannot be borrowed from someone else's experience. A precision, a clarity, a quality of seeing that only develops in people who have had to learn at real cost the difference between the story and the truth underneath it. That is not a small thing. In a world full of managed surfaces and carefully maintained appearances, the ability to feel the gap between what is presented and what is real, that is rare, and it is yours. Earned at the price of this moment. We're near the end. And I want to close in the place that exists after the knowing, not after the healing that takes longer and happens in its own time and cannot be rushed or scheduled, but after the knowing, in the first quiet moment when the shock has moved through enough that something else can be felt underneath it. In that quiet, however brief, however fragile, there is something that feels like ground, not comfortable ground, not familiar ground, but real, solid in the way that only things which have not been built on concealment can be solid. That is the ground you build the next thing on. Not today, not this week, but eventually, when the vertigo settles and the tears have moved through, and you can stand in the open air without needing the walls of the old story to hold you upright. The truth hurt. It was always going to hurt. But the hurt of truth is clean in a way that the comfort of a lie never is. It moves. It changes shape. It eventually, not on any schedule you can force, becomes something you can carry without it carrying you. Take what resonates tonight. Leave what doesn't. Be gentle with yourself in the way you perhaps weren't gentle enough to be while you were inside the not knowing. You deserve that gentleness now more than ever. 2 questions for the quiet or for the comments if something opened in you tonight. What have you been translating as your own malfunction that was actually just accurate perception of something real? And what becomes possible in your life when you stop maintaining architecture that was never built to hold you? Sit with those without rushing, gently. I'll see you in the next one.